Before I introduce our speaker for this evening, I'd like to recognize Bill Gouchel over the Trent Locke Institute here at Ole Miss, right there in the white shirt. And also our chaplain for the week, Reverend Bill Barksdale. Congressman Gregg Harper is currently serving his fourth term in the U.S. House of Representatives after being first elected to Congress in November of 2008. Mississippi's 3rd Congressional District stretches from Wilkinson County in southwest Mississippi to Oktibbeha County and includes the northeast corner of Jackson and the I-20 corridor into east central Mississippi. Congressman Harper has lived in Mississippi's 3rd Congressional District since 1972 and currently resides in Pearl with his wife of 36 years, Sydney, and has 2 children, son Livingston and daughter Maggie Harper Bailey, and a son-in-law, Brett Bailey. The Harpers are active members of Cross Gates Baptist Church in Brandon, Mississippi. The son of a former petroleum engineer and a mom who worked 2 days a week until she was 88 years old, Gregg learned at a young age the value of hard work and importance of a solid education. Congressman Harper and Sydney are both graduates of Mississippi College, where he majored in chemistry. He then earned his law degree from University of Mississippi School of Law in 1981. Prior to his service in Congress, Congressman Harper practiced law for 27 years, including serving as the prosecuting attorney for the cities of Brandon and Richland. He also served on the Mississippi Oil and Gas Board and remains active in his community as a member of both the Pearl and Rankin County Chambers of Commerce. This truly is an outstanding man. He's helped me along my process in attaining an appointment to the United States Naval Academy, and he's a really good friend of my family, of Charles Evers and Medgar Evers. Thank you.
Thank you. Proud of you, Ralph.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Thanks a lot, Ralph. I appreciate it very much. And when you think about, I guess, Charles is your great-grandfather, Charles Evers. And Medgar Evers, of course, as you know, was assassinated in 1963 in his driveway at home in Jackson. And one of the things that I have done, and working with Benny Thompson as an original co-sponsor on this as well, and that is to award, we have to go through the process, but our goal is to award a Congressional Gold Medal to Medgar Evers. His wife has given her blessings that the recipient of the Congressional Gold Medal would not be Mrs. Evers or her family, but it would be the new Civil Rights Museum that's going to open up in Jackson next year. So that's something we can do. You know, when we look at what's going on in our world, I'll tell you how glad I am to be here. This is my favorite thing to do each year, is to get to come speak to Boys State. And I look and I'm comforted because I know you guys didn't get here because you were being lazy or mediocre, that you have goals and dreams and things that you want to do with your life, and we are hopeful about what that future is. So my mom passed away in December. She would have been 90 years old on December the 19th. She died 9 days shy of her 90th birthday. Hardworking. But growing up, she did something, probably some of your parents, grandparents have done this, the count-it cross-stitch where, you do the needle point. And she had one that I remember my whole life. It was a sailing vessel that she had done. And here was what it said. It said, "One ship sails east, another west, with the self-same winds that blow. 'Tis the set of the sails, and not the gales, which determines the way they go." So you get to make life's choices. Let me tell you, to be here with you is a special deal for me. But life sometimes doesn't go exactly the way you're planning on it going. Sometimes you hit some speed bumps and some things. These are tough seats on the front row. You're going to get a crick in your neck if I get too close here, guys, on the front. I also want to tell you I've got Chip Reynolds back here, an Ole Miss grad from another life, who is my district director here in Mississippi. And I have my son, Livingston, back there. Livingston, wave at everybody back there, buddy. Thank you very much. Thanks. Now, I have to be real careful saying this because we are on the campus at Ole Miss, okay? But my son, 2 years ago, was one of the first 2 students to graduate from the special program at Mississippi State University that was designed for students with intellectual disabilities to be able to go to college. One of the first 2 in this state. It's the only program in the state. And so I'm really proud of him. The older you get, the more you realize how God directs your paths and how things that happen, people you meet. That's why it's important as you make new friends this week, try to maintain contact with them. Look, I'd have been a lot nicer in law school to John Grisham if I'd have known he was going to be that famous. So you never know. And sometimes in school, too, you may see somebody and you think, they're kind of a nerd, kind of a geek. But that geek is going to be the person that's going to own a company 20 years from now that employs 300 people, and you're probably going to want a job from them. So remember how that works and how it does. Now, we're blessed in Mississippi. It's a great state. There's no place like it to raise a family, to live, something that we're so, I'm just so proud to be here and to be able to represent in Congress. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how I got here. And then we're going to take some questions and do that as well. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for World War II and Columbus Air Force Base. My dad was a gunner on a B-17 in World War II. He went in at age 18, 1944. Usually the life expectancy of a crew member on a B-17 wasn't very good. Lots of crew members died during that. Right after the war, he gets assigned to Columbus Air Force Base in Columbus, Mississippi. And my mama lived in, I was going to say Aberdeen, but that would have sounded a little uppity. She was from Lackey, outside Aberdeen, okay? And so it's Christmas or December of 1945, and some of her friends say, Lois, you need to go to the dance at the base. And she said, well, I don't have a dress. And some of her, I won't say that my mom was dirt poor because they had dirt. But she didn't have a dress, and she didn't have any way to do that. But 2 of her brothers, 2 of my uncles, that had returned from combat in World War II, put their money together, bought her dress, she went to the dance, met my dad, and they married 3 months later. Almost sounds like a Hallmark movie, doesn't it, on that? So my dad was a petroleum engineer, as you heard from Ralph, and that was really, it meant we moved all the time. So kindergarten through the 12th grade, I was in 10 different schools in 4 different states and lived in a 5th state one summer. In fact, I was grown before I realized some people live in the same town their whole lives. And so you go through that. Our last move was from California back to Mississippi. And I wound up in high school at Provine High School my 10th grade year. Hey, we got a Rams here. Okay, all right. The Rams are here. And so during that 10th grade year, one of my friends wasn't getting in trouble like the rest of us 10th grade boys were getting, okay? And look, in the 10th grade, we all think we're pretty cool. Probably nothing less cool than a 10th grade boy, but that's okay. So he tricked me into going to these Campus Life Youth for Christ meetings. And at the last meeting of that year, they had an altar call, and I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior at that meeting. And it changed my life. That friend didn't leave me alone, though. He got me going to his church, where I later met my future wife. So my wife and I started dating when she was 15 and I was 17, and we dated 5.5 years, and this summer, we'll have been married 37 years. So I'm very, very blessed in that. So thank you. Now, guys, I'm going to give you a few pointers here, okay? How do you treat a lady? Okay? Now, let me say this. Now, you're thinking, man, okay, I'm just, I've got a nice-looking lady that I'm going out with, and you're trying to decide how to treat her. Let me tell you how to treat her, okay? You take a minute, fast forward about 20 years, well, probably, maybe 20 years from now, and you've got a daughter. You treat the young lady you're dating like you want somebody later to treat your daughter later on, okay? If you do that, you're going to be all right. Now, let me tell you how I got into politics, because some of you I know in here are interested in that, and you're thinking along those lines. And I'll have to say that I was a highly unpaid political volunteer, highly unpaid. You got that? Unpaid. And I worked on my first campaign when I was a senior at Mississippi College, and wound up doing that. And I've always worked on campaigns all the time until I ran. But here's what happened. When I decided to run, when the seat came open, realize this, I'm only the third person to represent the 3rd Congressional District of Mississippi in 50 years. G.V. Sonny Montgomery represented for 30 years, then Chip Pickering for 12. I'm now in my 8th year. And so they don't pass those around very much. So when Congressman Pickering said he wasn't going to run for re-election, I immediately said I was running. Now, that means it was a 7-person primary in my race in 2007, 2008 when we ran, and there were some great people running. One of them who was a self-funder, who his campaign spent about $1.3 million, 1.2, 1.3. And then another person, and he did not make the runoff. Another person had statewide name ID, spent over $600,000. He made the runoff. We made the runoff on $270,000. That's not supposed to happen. TV, to do a moderate buy TV, cost about $10,000 a day in the congressional district if you go back 8 years ago. It's more now. So ours was the pay and pray campaign. We'd raise $20,000, we'd buy some TV, and we'd pray a lot more and get some more money. And we get down to the end, and we have no money, no prospects for coming up with any more money. And so you can't go dark the last weekend of a campaign. You got to stay up on TV, or you're admitting you can't get there. So I went to the bank and borrowed $20,000 to pay for the last weekend of TV before the election. Now, for you who aspire in politics, let me give you some advice. If you ever decide in your campaign you're near the end and you got to have some more money and nobody can give you any money and you've got to go borrow that money from the bank, tell your wife you borrowed it before she reads it in the capital city newspaper. So I'm alive today only because when she read it, because I hadn't told her, didn't want her to worry, I'm alive today only because when she read it, we had won and it had already been paid back. It is something that we can do as you look at that. Now, if you want to be somebody great, be meek. What's meek? Being gentle, quiet sometimes. Be meek but not weak. Being meek but not weak is a sign of strength as a man. And do y'all ever get tired of watching TV and all they do is argue? Or you watch the news, or you watching them debate, and the different candidates are attacking each other? And those are, that's just the way that it is now. But you don't have to do it that way. Also, hang out with people that don't have the same opinion and views as you. Be able to defend your opinion that you have on something. Study. This group knows how to look beyond the 30-second soundbite. Study it a little bit. Look at it and see what you're going to do in that regard. So we have a great opportunity. You have a great opportunity. If you have a servant spirit, one who is meek but not weak, one who is humble, one who puts others in front of you, which is what Christ said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? So how you treat somebody is going to make a big difference on how you go. There was a Christian positive thinking speaker who passed away a number of years ago named Zig Ziglar. And he was a great speaker, somebody I love to listen to. And he said, you can get everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. Meaning if you help others, those things come around. They come back to help you. So don't ever be afraid to be that person that helps somebody. You know the best way to judge character? Somebody else's character, your own character, is how somebody treats a child or an adult with special needs. You know, when I got to D.C., we have an internship program. By the way, I hope you're in college. Where's Britton Smith? Where'd he go? One of my former interns. He's in here somewhere. So when you're in college, you have an opportunity. I would recommend that probably not your first year, second year, but maybe your junior year, you apply for an internship in your congressional office and also in the 2 U.S. senators' office. Come up and spend a semester in Washington, D.C. It's an incredible opportunity and experience for you to go do that. So don't be afraid to take that out for a walk. But when I got there, we have this program for interns, for regular college students that are there, but there was nothing there for students with intellectual disabilities to be able to work on Capitol Hill. So when there's a need and you don't know what's there, what do? You start it. So my first year, I happened to be on the right committee, obviously happened to have a great interest in helping those with special needs. And so we started an internship program for students coming out of George Mason University. They had a program called Mason Life for students with intellectual disabilities for them to come up and work on Capitol Hill. We started with 5 House Republican offices of people that were friends of mine that had children with special needs. It was successful. We just finished our 6th full year as a permanent program. We've had over 130 House and Senate offices, Republicans and Democrats that have participated in it, and it costs the taxpayers no money, but gives incredible experience for these young people and something they've never gotten to do. So you have to be real careful. You know, we get into partisan politics, you know, Republicans versus Democrats. Now, I don't want to get in trouble with my Republican friends, but I got a lot of Democrat friends, okay? Don't tweet that out, because I could get in trouble. But you know, if you're willing to work together, you can do some things that are important to this country. One thing that we did was a bill that I authored called the Gabriella Miller Kids First Research Act, named after Gabriella Miller, who died of brain cancer when she was 10, diagnosed when she was 9. She became this incredible pediatric cancer advocate the last year of her life. What the bill did was eliminated taxpayer funding of political conventions. You know, we got those coming up in July, right? So this eliminated about $126 million worth of taxpayer money to help underwrite that. We've got no business doing that. Instead, the money then goes to the National Institutes of Health for additional pediatric research based upon collaboration. We got it through the House, thanks to Peter Welch, a Democrat friend of mine, and it went through the Senate, and it was just a few years ago. I'm standing in the Oval Office, this poor boy from Mississippi, with the President of the United States for the bill signing ceremony. I mean, that's a pretty remarkable thing to get to do. So, you know, I really, if you're going to be a leader, one of the things you have to do is you have to be a student. I think a student of the Bible. The greatest leadership book that you're ever going to find is in the Old Testament book of Nehemiah. So every problem you may ever face in life, whether it's in school, politics, business, whatever your goal may be, remember this: God has put something on your heart for you that you're supposed to do, but we have people come and crush that from time to time, tell you can't do something great. Don't ever listen to the naysayers. But what in Nehemiah, you remember the wall in Jerusalem was torn down. He was brokenhearted about it, but what did he do? He had a dream. He wanted to rebuild the wall. He enlisted the support of the king. He got the resources that he needed. He enlisted the help of his friends to do the work that they needed to do. He had enemies. Anything great you're going to do, somebody's going to tell you can't do it, and they're going to be against you. Sometimes you got to play offense. Sometimes you got to play defense. So Nehemiah is a great one. I encourage you to go read that and see how that did, because it will apply on what you need to do in so many things. Here's the problem we have. Problem we have is you've got something you want to do. You don't have the confidence to do it, because guess what you're doing? You're measuring your life and our flaws and problems that we have against somebody else's highlight reel. You know, if you're going to be, you're starring in your own life, aren't you? You're the star of your own life. Act like it. Be the person who is going to be the leader that makes other people feel welcome. Right now, if you had an hour that you had to sit down with somebody, you can think of somebody right now. It may be your favorite uncle, it may be a close friend, but there's somebody out there you can think of right now that lifts you up. As my papa would have said, he wears well. Somebody that you like being around because they're uplifting. You be that person that encourages other people, and life will be a whole lot better. Now, look, our country has problems, but it is still, without question, the greatest country in the history of this world. Today we celebrate Memorial Day. You know, I did a Memorial Day event last Friday. I did one this morning in Brandon. And, you know, we have a great debt that we owe to people who not just served, but paid the ultimate sacrifice by losing their lives in battle. But our responsibility is not just to remember those that, as you've done here and you've done as we reflect on Memorial Day, but it also is to remember those who are currently serving. Because if we don't feel that need to make sure they've got the right training, the right equipment, the right support, a Veterans Administration that has not done what they're supposed to do, those things have to be corrected and put in place if we're going to have people serve our nation. As I said earlier, you know, you have people that God puts in your life. The older you get, the more you realize that certain things have happened or are happening that really help. This time last year, I went with, I think it was 7 or 8 House members, and we did a missile defense tour of the Pacific Command, PACOM. One of our visits was to, we went in 10 days. We flew from Andrews Air Force Base. We went to Hawaii for one night to go tour a top secret missile defense radar installation. Then we went to Guam. Went to Japan, Korea, Alaska, and back to Andrews. Exhausting trip, but just come away being so proud of the young men and women that serve our country, what they're doing. But let me tell you one thing. The first night, we get in late to Honolulu. The next morning, we fly to Kauai to go tour a top secret radar installation on that island. The commander that gave us the briefing, his wife, my wife and I taught in Sunday school when she was in the 12th grade at Brandon High School. So these stories, you're going to see them as you grow. But I want to tell you one thing, and then we're going to take questions. When we were at Guam at PACOM, the headquarters there, outside the room, beautiful black and white photo that had a landing craft of Marines about to land on Guam in July 21st, 1944, to take the island back from the Japanese. And you know what those Marines were doing on board the landing craft? They were all in prayer. They were down on their knees praying. And so probably one of the greatest honors for me was while we were in Guam, we were there on Memorial Day last year, and we got to participate in the wreath-laying ceremony at the cemetery there that has 3,000 Americans who are buried there. Man, how can we ever repay that? One way we repay it is you do your job. Be the best you can be, whatever that is. Don't settle for mediocrity. don't just, take what comes your way. You be the best you can be. God bless you. Thank you. Take some questions. I got to tie my shoe. Now, I know you needed to stretch, but I'm going to tell my wife I got a standing ovation. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it very much. All right, we're going to take some questions. How are we going to take those questions? We got microphones over here. If you got a question, we'll try to take as many as we can in the time that we have. And Ralph, how much time have I got to talk? What do we got? Okay. Britton, you'll throw something at me when it's time to stop. Okay. So if you're going to ask a question, just tell us your name, where you're in school, and then we'll be glad to do that. And look, I can hear you from here. You don't necessarily have to go all the way down the aisle. Provine. I remember the shout out for the Rams. Okay. The question was, what year did I graduate from Provine? My brother graduated from Provine, who's a little older than me. We moved back. I was there just, I'm going to tell you really how old I am. It was 1853. No, it wasn't quite that long ago. I was there in 1971, 72, 10th grade year. My parents built a house out at the reservoir, and that put me in the old Pearl School District is where I went. And just so you'll know, Michael, I was an abused child in high school, because that was before kids had a constitutional right to have a car. So I drove about 45 minutes on the school bus my 11th and 12th grade year from the reservoir to the old Pearl High School off Pearson Road. So, that was tough, man, tough. All right, yes, sir.
My name is Grayson Wolf. I attend Northwest Rankin High School. What do you believe is currently the biggest issue in American politics?
Okay. Grayson's question was, what is the biggest issue facing American politics or facing our country as an issue? Okay. The biggest problem facing, I think, is that we're living on an intellectual cul-de-sac, a dead-end street, where the only thing that matters is whether or not your opinion prevails. And we have now, it used to be, practicing law, we'd go butt heads with attorney to attorney in these pretty serious trials, and but when the trial was over, we'd go out and get something to eat. Okay? Today, it's the politics of personal destruction. It's not enough to just state your position, but I think a lot of times we're weak on making the argument, and we think we can just destroy the other person, and then the argument doesn't matter what the issue actually is. So I think that, look, I think the lack of civility in politics just doesn't work. It's not me. It doesn't work. I can make the argument. I can fuss with them if I need to fuss with them. But at the end of the day, I'm going to ask them how how the mama's doing. You don't have to make it personal. And so that is the biggest problem in politics. And by the way, you know where the word politics comes from, don't you? From two words, poly meaning many and ticks meaning blood-sucking insects, but that's another story. Yes, sir.
Right now, I'm from Mississippi. Since you are a Christian, I know that some things in America we're kind of divvying away from what we stand on. What conflicts do you, like, in an everyday situation, what conflicts do you face when it comes to politics?
And Reagan's question was, what conflicts do I face in politics and religion, and how those sometimes may be in conflict with each other? I think it's very important that whatever you do, you are consistent with yourself, and you just don't worry about what somebody may think. Be consistent in your walk and in what you do. And I remember when I made the decision to follow Christ my 10th grade year, somebody said, be careful of the life you lead, because you may be the only Bible that some people read. So that walk is going to be very important. There are things, but here's the thing. We have certain core beliefs. Don't compromise those. You can, you can have a difference of opinion and not be, nasty about it. So you can say, but here's the thing, if you can't, with argument, without using the Bible, if you can't with argument defend your position, then you need to study that position a little bit better. And so you have an obligation to be somewhat intellectual about what you're going to do in a nice way. Look, I've seen some debates that, man, they get nasty, and yeah, they might technically win the debate on points, but they're not winning any friends, okay? And so how you do that and deal with other people, I think, will be very important. But yeah, there are issues. I'm very strongly pro-life. And there are some, so I believe that if we don't protect the unborn, who's going to do it? There's nobody standing up for the unborn child. So if there's legislation that varies from that, then I've got to do something to make sure that doesn't happen if it's in my power. So, thanks, Reagan. Okay. Grab that microphone right there. Okay. It's a little further back. Oh. All right. Don't go away. We'll come back to you.
My name is Hayes Lynn. I'm from Richmond, Mississippi. And I just had a simple question, what's the hardest decision you had to make as a congressman so far?
Hardest decision was probably to run for re-election, because it's, and I'll come back and answer your question, but look, it's not a glamorous lifestyle. You may think it is. Last year on Delta, I had 142 takeoffs and landings just on Delta. And so 3 out of every 4 weeks, I'm on the airplane flying back and forth. I know this is being recorded. I'm almost 8 years sleeping on an air mattress in my office, okay? So I sleep in my office, I get up and go work out in the gym and shower in the congressional gym and then go back to work. So it is something you got to want to do it. I think that's the hardest part. I know that's not a policy issue, but it is something of being away from your family. This job, when I ran the first time, got elected the first time, my daughter was, Maggie was halfway through 11th grade year. And had I had small children, I would have never run, because I want to be there with my kids. But my home's in Mississippi. I don't spend any weekends in D.C. But issues, probably the biggest issues, probably on the budget and spending, because guys, when you go to college, they're going to be mailing you some credit card applications that won't quit. And the great thing about that is you use your credit card and you never have to pay it back, right? Wrong. You're going to be paying it back. And so those issues are very, very important. So if we expect our homes and our states to live within a budget and live within their means and not spend more than you make, why can't our country do that? We fuss about the budget and the money. Well, guess what we're fussing over? We're fussing over a third of the federal spending. 2/3 of the federal spending is already set as mandatory or entitlement spending. In 10 years, they're projecting 78% and only 22% will be discretionary, which is where your military defense spending has to come from. So we have to do something to turn that around, or it's not going to work. So that is, I think, the single biggest issue is how do we prioritize spending? That's one thing I did with the Gabriella Miller Kids First Research Act. We need the research money, because that money now will help pediatric illnesses and diseases. So don't spend money on stuff we don't have to, but we fuss about that on the discretionary side, that 1/3 of the spending, but that's nothing. If we don't figure out what to do about Social Security and Medicare and other entitlement spending and mandatory spending, what do? It will crash. So we have that. So that's my single biggest issue that we're working on now. We get it working?
Okay. My name is Noah Martin, and I'm from Wesson, Mississippi. Recently, I attended Lions Club leadership camp that you spoke at, and both then and now, your words have definitely made a huge impact on me, and I never got the chance then, so I just want to say now from all of us, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we got one back here with microphone first.
Yes, sir. My name's Hunter Davis from Carrier, Mississippi. I was wondering, what do you believe, in your opinion, the largest leadership responsibility that our generation upcoming is going to assume the mantle of leadership from?
To think for yourself. Because guess what? We have the presence of all these outside third-party groups that can come in and drop $1 million on. Look, go back 2 years ago when Senator Thad Cochran was running for re-election. $8.5 million spent by outside groups to do nothing but to try to destroy Senator Cochran was spent. So when you have that, and you have other groups that are out there on the news, or they're doing this, telling you that thing. I finally have told people in speeches that if you get your news from an email that at the bottom says donate now, you probably need another news source. Okay, so I think it's very important that you learn how to think by yourself. Okay, don't depend on somebody else telling you what you're supposed to believe, because guess what? You might be wrong. So be able to defend it and do it. I think that's a big challenge, but it's doable. And it's doable by studying a topic and not just accepting what somebody else says is the position about something. Because you'll hear things, they'll say, well, the science is settled on that. Rarely is the science settled. We have advances going on right now in all kinds of healthcare issues. One of the big issues that we've been involved in is telehealth, telemedicine. I didn't mean to get in that probably when I started in '09. But guess where the leading place in the country is on telemedicine? University of Mississippi Medical Center. #1. And so we just held on to the coattail, and that has become an issue. We're one of the leading, if not the leading congressional office on telemedicine issues because of Mississippi. So you never know what's going to come your way in that regard. So, yes, sir. We got time for 2 more questions, and I got 3 standing. So, can I do 3? If I'm quick, okay. We'll do quick answers. The questions are no problem.
Good evening, Mr. Harper.
Thank you.
My name is Vardaman Durinbas, and I was wanting to know what is one way I could get into politics, even though I'm a bit more of a progressive in a conservative-leaning state such as Mississippi.
Sure. Volunteer for somebody who's running a campaign. That's the best way to get in. Look, I'm the guy that went door to door, put out signs, helped put events together, put out signs late at night, early in the morning. And look, we've all got different. Look, I don't agree with myself all the time. Okay? So don't be afraid to realize, okay, why do I believe that? And so what you're going to find is some views you may be considered progressive, others you may be conservative on some issues if we dug far enough. So don't be afraid to do that. Just be nice about it and get involved in somebody's campaign. Yes? Okay.
Civil rights issues. My question for you is, what strides have you personally taken to improve and work on poverty reasons?
So he says that he can tell that I've been progressive on racial issues. What am I doing about poverty issues? What am I trying to do on that? And he's from Corinth. Thank you very much for the question. And look, first thing is you create an environment where companies come in and create jobs. The best way out of poverty is to get a job, get a good job. And that's what you have to do. And so there are arguments. You know, we could sit here and talk about increasing the minimum wage. But that's an issue that sounds great, but you have to sit here and think through it. Okay, if you increase the minimum wage, then the cost of that product at that, where it is, McDonald's. You know, in another life, I worked at UPS when I was in junior high, loading 18-wheelers every night. I worked at Baskin-Robbins. I worked at a grocery store. I've mowed yards. I've done all that fun stuff. But here's what happens. If you raise the minimum wage, which sounds good, then the cost of that product goes up and everybody has to spend more money for those products, and the net gain is probably minimal. Understand, minimum wage jobs, which everybody in this room has had or will have, are entry-level jobs to get you to where you need to go. Okay? It's not, nobody in here wants to have their final job being a minimum wage job. And nobody in here will, because this group is ahead of the curve. So I think we get back to prioritization, and that is, let's do things that actually help people, that don't hurt people. And sometimes we think giving more money is the answer. Job training is very important, which we're very supportive of. Our community colleges do an excellent job on that, by the way. Last question, Britton. Yes, sir.
My name is Alex Patterson, and I'm from Carrier. What is your favorite part about being in the position that you're in?
It's not to travel. So he said, what's my favorite part about being, look, getting to help people, getting to do things that I could never have done. I could never have done this on special needs issues, and I could never have done this on telehealth. I could never have promoted our state. I've never had an ability to go out and speak to people, to encourage young people. So that is an incredible opportunity. The diversion up there is, of course, I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which handles about 63% of all issues up there. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings in Washington, but it's the best committee to be on. And the other committee that I'm on that's appointed by the Speaker, he's put me on the Committee on House Administration, and I've wound up being the chairman and vice chairman in different terms of the Library of Congress. So pretty cool that I got to, that'd be the kind of a highlight for me, just, old Mississippi boy walking out on the stage for the Gershwin Awards when we honored Willie Nelson last year, Billy Joel 2 years ago. This year, I don't know if it's public or not, I'll probably get in trouble, Smokey Robinson this year. So those things kind of make it worthwhile, and I do a lot of Capitol tours. I love to do Capitol tours. Britton will tell you, who's helped give a lot of them himself. If you've got, I really enjoy that. If you have somebody that's never been to Washington, D.C., and I can give them a Capitol tour, take them on the floor of the House, maybe do a Capitol Dome tour where you climb all the way up and go on the outside of the dome. Just making people's lives more enjoyable is probably my favorite thing. So God bless everybody. I enjoyed it tonight. Thank you.
On behalf of the city of Harper, we'd like to thank Gregg Harper for coming and speaking to us on Memorial Day. And also, Gregg, would you like to meet your city?
I want to say, where is the city? Come on, let me hear it. Where are you?
Hey.